everything's always changing all the time, nothing in this presentation is changing. Like, this is the exact same presentation we would have done a year ago. So the good news is you all already know the kinds of data we're going to be looking at. We'll kind of walk through today how to look at some of those different data points, where to access those, but this is not about new things. This is about using what you already have, leveraging what you already have to figure out how we can make instructional adjustments. I did have a survey link on here, Tamara, if you could drop that in the chat for me. This is not the sign-in sheet for today's presentation. This is a survey because we are collecting feedback about our website. So in the interest of trying to always improve and do things better, we would like some feedback about our website. So if you have the opportunity at some point to go in and fill out that survey, give us some feedback both on usability of our website, some of the documents that we have there. That would be really helpful to us because, like I said, we're always trying to improve, trying to make sure that we can always do things better for you. So here in the middle of the year, midpoint of the school year, what we want to think about is we want to think about, where do we need to make adjustments? Where are we on track already? Which kids are growing and why are they growing? So we make sure we can continue that. Reevaluating our groups, reevaluating what we're doing instructionally, regrouping students if necessary. All of those rethinking pieces are what we're doing at this point in the middle of the year. You may find that you don't need to do anything differently, and that's great. You may find that just little tweaks are necessary for specific kids, and that's what this point in the year is for, is to make sure that we can make those adjustments now before it's the end of the year and before it is too late for us to make a change. This document is our data analysis throughout the year checkpoints. If you've never seen this document before, please don't tell me I don't need to hear that. But this particular document, this calendar, shows you at different points during the year what data we recommend you look at, what reports specifically we recommend that you take a look at. So if you look at middle of the year, we've got semester exams there for middle school and high school teachers. We've got your unit assessments for curriculum, and obviously those unit assessments, those district tests are ongoing. You'll be looking at those throughout the year. Same thing with formative assessments. 9-week grade reports, that's also for middle school and high school as well. But then we get to the MAP piece. That's our big chunk of data to analyze at the middle of the year is MAP. We're going to look today at the achievement status and growth. We're going to look at projected proficiency, class by RIT, and we're also going to touch on really quickly the ability performance chart in COGAT if you have not already looked at that as well. On this document, which again is posted on our website, there are links to all of the guides that go along with each of these documents. So for example, if you need to know how to access the achievement status and growth report, you can go in, click on that particular link. It will take you to a guide that shows you how to access it, what questions you should ask, what you can find out by looking at that data, kind of guides you through that process. So in order to find this particular document, you would go to the Assessment Research and Program Evaluation website. This is our internal website for the assessment department. The quick link, the friendly URL to that is www.pisd.edu/ARPEstaff, ARPESTAFF, ARPEstaff. So that takes you to our internal website. Within that website, there's a page for data analysis and guides. This page has not only all of the guides we're going to talk about today for data analysis, but also all of the guides for EduGents. So if you need to learn how to do something on EduGents or you want to know more about a specific report, that is on this page as well. The shortcut that takes you directly to this page on our website is pisd.edu/data analysis, all one word. So that will take you directly to this data analysis page. Notice at the top in red, it says data analysis throughout the year. That is what takes you to the calendar that we looked at earlier, both a PDF Google document of that calendar, but also below it, you're going to see it in table form. And this shows you again all of the different assessments that we recommend looking at this time of year. And then, like I said, links to the guides that will show you how to access that report, what to do with that information, and some guiding questions as well. So what we're going to go through today, our data sources for here at the middle of the year, is we're going to talk about class breakdown by projected proficiency. That is a MAP report, an NWA report. We're going to talk about the achievement status and growth report. That's also a MAP report. The ability performance chart is one that we talked about in our last webinar that goes along with COGAT and compares COGAT to MAP. We're not really going to go into that one today, but it's one that you do want to look back at again now that you have new MAP data, because as your MAP data refreshes, this report refreshes to show you where your students are now. We will talk about MAP and class by RIT today. And then district assessments, again, that is one of those ongoing assessments. You're taking those very frequently in grades 3 and up. So that is something that you're going to keep coming back to. We're not really going to touch on that today. It's the same reports we've always recommended, but just know that that's an ongoing piece of your data analysis. So let's first talk about projected proficiency. MAP, or NWEA, takes a look at what MAP score a student needs to have in order to be likely to get to approaches, meets, or masters on STAR at the end of the year. That is projected proficiency, where we project they are going to be in their levels of proficiency at the end of the year. NWEA gives us two reports that we recommend to look at. One is a zoomed out view and one is more of a zoomed in view. So if you look at the report that is at the top of your screen, this class breakdown by projected proficiency, this report is student by student, has each student's name listed. This is the report we recommend for teachers. So classroom teachers, this report has student names on it, which is really what you need in order to be able to take action. You need to know who the students are. The students are placed in the table according to where they are projected to be on STAR at the end of the year. And again, this is based on their mid-year MAP winter test event. Those students that are at the bottom of any one column, so for example, the kids at the bottom of the approaches column, they are very close in MAP RIT score to the top of the next column, to the meets column. The kids at the bottom of meets are very close to the top of masters. So those students at the bottom of any column are those students with the greatest likelihood of moving up a level of proficiency between now and spring with just a little bit extra accelerated growth. Just a few more points than expected would move that student from the bottom of one column to the top of the next column. This report is laid out very simply and it helps you very easily identify who those students are who have the greatest likelihood of moving up. Now, again, this is a very zoomed in view, looking at specific kids. Your administrator or principals might want to look at the projected proficiency summary report. That is the pie chart that you see at the bottom. This is a much more zoomed out view. You can't get to the kid level from this particular report, but this is one that your campus might talk about in an overall way as far as how is the overall campus doing. It shows the percent of students who are projected to be approaches, meets, or masters at the end of the year, again, based on their winter MAP score. It's important to note that second grade is included in this projected proficiency summary. So when you look at that pie chart, that's not just third, fourth, and fifth grade, it's second grade as well. So depending on your role on your campus, you might be looking at just the class breakdown by projected proficiency, or you might be looking at the summary report. But those two are going to give you a picture of your current reality, where your students currently are sitting in their likelihood of passing STAR. Now, as we talked about earlier, on that calendar, you will have a link to the guide, the Focus Data Analysis Guide, that shows you both how to access this report. Again, it's on NWEA, and how to find that particular report, how to read that report, and then what to do with that information, some guiding questions, and how to dig a little bit deeper when you're looking at specific students and how that may be helpful to you. So when we're looking at MAP, that's really our first step, is where are our students right now in their likelihood of passing STAR, their projected proficiency. Those students who are at the bottom of any one column that are likely to move to the next column, the way that a student moves from column to column is by getting a little bit more than expected growth between now and spring. So the next set of reports we're going to look at have to do with growth. We're going to look at the NWA Growth Summary Report and the Achievement Status and Growth Report. Now, again, there are two reports in NWA. One is zoomed out and one is zoomed in. This is the Growth Summary Report. This report is found in the campus data folders that principals have access to. This cannot be run unless the map window is closed. So that's the reason why we can't just run it whenever we want to. We have to close the window in order to be able to run it. But we have run these before winter break and we've put them in the campus data folder so that all campuses have access to this report. When we're looking at this report, we are looking in a very zoomed out way to see overall as a grade level and a subject, how are students doing in growth compared to an expectation. So in this case, we're looking at fall to winter. So how much growth the group of students got from fall to winter compared to how much growth they were expected to get from fall to winter. In the visual down below, the purple bars represent how that group of students did. In this case, it's a district level report, so how the entire grade level did. The orange diamonds represent the norms, the nationwide norms for that particular grade level. Now, there are a lot of other numbers on this report. We recommend that you focus on the last column of numbers, the student median conditional growth percentile. This shows out of all of the students in that group, where are they in relationship to growth compared to students just like them? And when they're ranked from highest to lowest, what percentile rank is right in the middle? So for example, in this case, if we look at second grade district-wide, the median growth conditional growth percentile was at the 50th percentile rank. That means if we put all of the students in the grade level in order by their percentile rank that measures their growth, the middle student is at the 50th percentile rank, which is exactly average. So when you're looking at percentile rank, remember that the 50th is average. That means that that group of students has maintained their place in space, has maintained their performance, moving from fall into winter. For some students, that's just fine to maintain your place in space. For other students, we want more than expected growth. We want them to move up ranges. And so therefore, we're looking for more than the 50th percentile rank. This next report is the more zoomed in view. So for classroom teachers, this is the one that is going to be most helpful to you because it will show you who those students are. This is the Achievement Status and Growth Report. Again, this is on NWEA. This is one of your map reports, but this report can be run at any time. You don't need to wait until the window's closed. You can run it after you finish math and then run it again when you finish reading. This report populates overnight and you can run it whenever you need to. This shows student by student where they were at the beginning of the year and where they are right now. So you see fall map scores, then you see winter map scores. Then from here, it's going to show you how much growth the student was projected to get from fall until winter. Again, we chose this to be a fall to winter report. So this amount of growth that we see in projected RIT is how much growth they were expected to get to right now by winter. It shows us how many points of growth that would be. Then we see how much growth the student actually got. And then the growth index is the difference between how much growth we expected to see, the projection, and how much growth we actually got. So for this first student, they went from a 191 in the fall to a 202. They were projected to grow in winter to a 198. That would be 7 points of growth. They actually grew 11 points. That's their observed growth. So the difference between the projection, 7 points, and how much they actually grew, 11, is 4 points. That gives them a positive growth index. That's the reason why there's a yes in that column that says yes, they have met their projected growth. When you look at most students, A growth index that is 0 or higher, that is where they need to be. That is maintaining their place in space. They're making projected growth. However, students whose percentile rank back here in winter, if their percentile rank is below the 50th percentile rank, they need more than expected growth in order to catch up. And those students who were at the bottom of a column that we want to see accelerated growth from, they need more than typical expected growth to catch up. So what we consider to be a good growth index or a growth index that we're concerned about really depends on the student and where they are in terms of their projection to star. So we can't just look at one of these two pieces. We really have to look at both of those two pieces together in order to be able to see what does that growth tell us about that particular student. The conditional growth index compares that student's growth to other students in the national pool. And this measure is comparing it in terms of standard deviations to look at how far away from the norm is the student compared to students just like him. So in our first example here, this student who has a growth index of 4, they are about 0.9, 0.89 or zero point 0.9 above one standard deviation above the norm. So that's almost one full standard deviation above the norm. So that tells you that this growth is very good for this student and is at the higher end of what we would expect as far as moving beyond typical growth because they're almost a full standard deviation above the norm. Let's look at another example. So in this case, we have a student who is starting the year at a 216. That puts that student at the 77th percentile rank. In winter, this student dropped to the 197, and that put this student at the 24th percentile rank. So this student at the 77th percentile rank was likely to be meets, but more likely masters on STAR at the end of the year. But now dropping into the 24th percentile rank, this student is now at risk for not even passing STAR. If we look at that student's growth throughout the year, they were projected to go from a 216 at the beginning of the year to a 219. That would be 3 RIT score points of growth. But the student actually went backwards 19 points. So that's what gives you that growth index of a negative 22. When we look at the conditional growth index, we see that this is a very unusual score. This student's drop is more than 4 standard deviations below the mean. So this student's drop is very unusual, very far away from what we would expect. This indicates that this is likely just a bad test event for that particular kid. It is unlikely that a student would really drop that far back if that was a true test event for that kid, because this is a very unusual event. So looking at all these different data pieces together can give you a little bit of a better idea of where that particular student sits in relationship to others and how we can interpret that score. Now, again, we have a focus data analysis guide for this particular report, the Achievement Status and Growth Report. It shows you how to access the report, how to read the report, and some guiding questions to ask to help you understand the data a little bit better. At the very bottom of the Achievement Status and Growth Report, you will find a summary table. And again, there's a lot of numbers there. What we want to focus on is the second line in all of those numbers, and it's the percent of projected growth met. What this means is, of the whole class of kids, an entire grade level, an entire class of students, how much growth were they expected to get in terms of points compared to how much growth did they actually get, again, in terms of points, and then expressing that as a percentage. So the average percent of projected growth met is 100%. 100% does not mean every student met their goal. It means of the amount of points that this group of kids was expected to get, they got the amount of points. That means maybe some students missed it, some students exceeded it, but on average, they got the amount of points they were expected to. So when you're looking at that achievement status and growth report, that final page in each section, that percent of projected growth met gives you an idea of the overall growth of that group of students, whether it be a grade level or a classroom. Are we doing better in growing kids in math than in reading? Is one classroom growing better than another classroom? Is my first period class growing better than my fifth period class? Looking at different groups of students and being able to compare them to each other, that's what this percent of projected growth met helps you with. Are there any questions so far about any of that part? So once you've looked at your big data reports for middle of the year map, first looking at projection to star and then looking at growth, and you've compared those two and you kind of have an idea of which students are doing well in their projection to star, which kids are growing really well, which kids you're concerned about. On that focus data analysis guide, there's a section called next steps. And the next steps is always the same in terms of map. Next, we want to go into EdgeAgents and we want to look at that class by RIT report. We want to look in class by RIT to see what are the learning statements that that student is ready to learn and how do those correspond to our grade level standards. So once you've analyzed where your students are currently sitting, your next step is to go into EdgeAgents and pull up the class by RIT report. To access that report, you are going to click on Reports, and you get to that by clicking that little waffle icon that's next to your name in the top in the green bar. When you click on that waffle icon, it takes you to Reports. So once you click on Reports, you're going to scroll down about halfway down the page and you're going to find Plano Assessments. And the very last option in the purple box under Plano Assessments is Class by RIT. Now, depending on your level of access to EdgeAgents, you may have the view of just being able to see your class, or you may be able to see the entire grade level. Up in the top right-hand corner is where you'll be able to switch if you're looking at the whole grade level and you only want to see your class or vice versa. If you have that capability, it'll be in the top right-hand corner. Also at the top, you can choose which test you want to see, the math test or the reading test or the science test. No matter what you teach, you have access to all of the tests for your students. Because, for example, if you are a social studies teacher, if you're a science teacher, you absolutely need to see the reading map results from your students. That will be very valuable in the courses that you teach. Now, this first view, when you pull up Class by RIT, is going to show you all of the students in your class. It shows you how they performed overall in MAP. That's the number that's in parentheses next to their name. That's their overall MAP score. But the students are placed in the RIT ranges depending on how they performed in that particular strand. So you may see students in one column for numerical representations and a completely different column for computations and algebraic relationships. That is because how that student performed in each of those strands is very different. This allows you, first of all, to see relative strengths and weaknesses for your students. And high performing students, low performing students, and all kids in between will have relative strengths and weaknesses. So you'll be able to see where are those areas that student needs the most help in, where's our greatest opportunity for growth. Now, in talking about math in particular, elementary math, you likely have spent the entire first semester in the first two strands instructionally. Your entire first semester likely covered numerical representations and relationships and computations and algebraic relationships. That is the bulk of the first semester of math curriculum in the younger grades in K through 5. So when we're looking at middle of the year, it's important to take a look at what are we teaching next and where did my students perform in that particular strand. So many grade levels are moving into geometry and measurement. That is the next unit of study. You want to look and see how did your class perform in geometry and measurement, because as you can see in this example, students perform very differently in that strand than they might in other strands. And this may cause you to reconsider the groups of students that you have, how you're pulling students for small group math instruction, all kinds of grouping opportunities, small group instruction opportunities that you might have in your classroom. You might want to rethink those based on what you're teaching right now. Some of you still are working on computations and algebraic relationships. For example, third grade's going into fractions, and that lives in computations and algebraic relationships. But you still want to come here and see how they performed in that strand because it's going to look different from how they were performing at the beginning of the year when you first map tested. So again, it's cause to reevaluate where your students are sitting and where they are in relationship to what you're teaching next. Now, as you know, MAP tells us what kids are ready to learn next. It doesn't tell us what kids have mastered, but rather what are they ready for next in instruction. So when you're in this view, you can click on any student's name in any cell, and it brings you to this page. This page shows you what those students are ready to learn based on how they performed on MAP. So for any students in 5th grade who have a 191 to 200 in numerical representations, this is what they're ready for in instruction. If you are teaching something in the next unit that they are not showing you that they're ready for based on their MAP test event, that means that student needs scaffolding and support, maybe some front loading before you get to that next unit to ensure that student is able to access the on-grade level curriculum. If that student has already mastered something that you are going to be teaching in that next unit, that means that student's going to need some extension. They're going to need you to give them some additional activities, some additional resources, things that would be outside of what you're doing in regular Tier 1 instruction to extend for that particular student. This document is very helpful for a lot of different things. It's helpful for planning small group instruction. It's helpful for planning tutoring. You can use this to communicate with parents. You can use this to goal set with students. You can use this in lots of different ways for planning, for instructional conversations, lots of different ways that this can be helpful to you. Remember that this is showing you what this group of students is ready to learn and that it is filtered by grade level, which is why it's very helpful to you because it shows you of the grade level TEKS that you're responsible for, what are the things that align to that with the MAP test. I want you to notice in the top right-hand corner, you've got 4 little arrows there. The blue arrows left and right allow you to navigate between RIT ranges. So moving up RIT ranges, so for example, 191 to 200, moving up to 201 to 210. The other blue arrow will move you down RIT ranges. You can move back and forth between the RIT ranges within the same grade level to allow you to go back and review some things with students or push them forward up into the next RIT range when they're ready for that next set of standards, next set of content without having to go up to the next grade level. Notice the green arrows going up and down. That green arrow going down is very important. There are some students who may not be ready for the on-grade level standards that you have coming up next in your curriculum, or who don't have any on-grade level standards that they are ready for in instruction. For those students, you will need to use that green arrow going down to see what are some things that came from the grade level before that this student is not yet mastered, that they are ready for in instruction. This is very important, filling in gaps, especially in math, a content that builds upon itself, making sure that we have filled in all the gaps necessary for a student from previous grades so that they're able to build upon that knowledge with a firmer foundation moving forward. Again, we do have a guide for Class by RIT that shows you how to access the report, how to look at the report and interpret that information, and then some guiding questions that go along with that to kind of help guide your thinking as far as how this could be used, both for grouping and for instructional purposes. Any questions you all have about those data sources for middle of the year? So like I said, there's really not anything new at middle of the year. You're really looking at the same data you looked at the beginning of the year, but we're just digging more into the growth piece now. So it's not about new data, it's about more updated data. You're looking at MAP, both how they're projected to do on STAR and their growth, and you're comparing those two. A student can be growing really well, but not projected to pass STAR. A student can be projected to be masters on STAR, but not growing really well. So you want to look at both of those two pieces with each other to see what information does that tell you about a student. Then you want to take that to class by writ to see what are students ready for in instruction. We also talked about looking at COGAT information as well. Hopefully you looked at those COGAT results when they came back late last fall, but now is a good time to look at them again in conjunction with the new MAP data and kind of putting those two pieces together to see, now that we know those students who maybe did not grow as much as expected, let's look and see how they learn best with that COGAT data to see if that can help inform why our student is not making the growth we want them to and what we need to do instructionally to support them. And then, of course, we've got our district assessments, both unit assessments, PMAs, and our formative assessments as well. And those just help you track more frequently how students are doing in mastering the grade level standards. As always, if you have questions or if you need support in looking at your middle of the year data, Tamara and I are always happy to help. We can come out to your campus or we can meet on Teams and look at your data with you and kind of look at individual students or groups of students to see how your kids are doing and have collaborative conversations about that. What you see on the screen is the attendance for today's session. So if you will go ahead and go to that form and fill out that quick form to get your attendance for today, we'll make sure that we put that into Power Schools for you. We are also going to archive this webinar on our website so that you'll be able to go back and listen to it again later, or if you have teammates who were not able to come today and want to listen to it again later, then they can. I'll stay on for just a few minutes if anyone has any further questions, but do make sure that you fill out that attendance form so that you get credit for today.